Just going to wait a minute or so to let other people join us. Um, I've never done this before like this, so I just pray that I get it right, at least get part of it right. So, any suggestions you have for me, anything I can do to do this better in the future, let me know. Just trying to get myself together here. Uh, See if I can see the chat. And okay, I got that going. So I'm going to say hello to everybody. Just right before we get started here. Yeah, and I'm going to try to be kind of paying attention to that so I can be responsive as people have questions or they have any comments. And just grateful to God for this opportunity to share. So again, we have about another minute or so to go. I think we may be right there. Looks like it is time, 11:15. So let me go ahead and get started. My name is Pastor Ken Martin. If you don't already know me, I am excited to share in this way because there are some things that have kind of been bothering me over the years, and I have to admit that when I don't see the results that I want to receive, and I have done what I thought I knew to do, I'm frustrated by that. When I have prayers that I send up, and if I don't see any answers, to me, that's not a good thing. That's something we need to stop and talk about or figure out what's going wrong. So I've been having a series of conversations with a very close friend of mine. And so over time, she prevailed at the same time the Holy Spirit was prevailing to encourage me to do this. So I am grateful and thankful for this opportunity. So I want to make sure that Truth Tuesdays is something that not just is information for you, but it is something that you use to question, to challenge yourself, allow the Holy Spirit and the Word to direct you personally so that you wind up being who you're supposed to be. And that's kind of a corny thing in some respects. It's like everybody's talking about me over the last few years. But it really is, I think, important for you to know who you are and to know whose you are and for you to get where he wants you to go. And so the reason I have narrowed down our general topics to church and the kingdom of heaven during these conversations for the time being is primarily because I think that if we truly understood who is the church, then we can understand who we are. And we also know what we're supposed to do collectively with other Christians. So, who is the church? That's the question. Jesus only used that word in recorded history anyway. He only used that word three times that we can tell. And both of them were in the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 16 and Matthew chapter 18. And my primary supposition to you is that what Jesus meant as church is not what we see today. So, for people who have issues with the church, I understand that and I get that. For people who think that the church is not relevant, you know what? I understand that and I get that because the thing that we call church is not necessarily what he intended as church. So I'm going to be, for 30 seconds, I'm going to be sort of scholarly and intellectual, and then we're going to get back to just talking. The Greek word that Jesus used when he said church, that we translate to church, was not a religious term. It was a word that everybody used. Everybody knew what it meant, but it was a Greek word that referred to people who were called out to make it in that area like it's supposed to be. So, in context, as I'm wrapping up my 30 seconds on this, in context, as we are Christians who are believers and whose residence is not in earth, but it's in heaven, we have our primary residence in heaven. We're supposed to, as church, make it in church. I mean, make it in the earth like it is. The church was just a group of people who were called out for that purpose. They knew the heart of the king and they made it manifested in the rules and in their lifestyles in that area. And so, in the foreign context, when a country took over another one, they sent ecclesia to that church to make it in that new country like it was back in the homeland. That's the only intellectual thing I plan on saying today. So, if we know that church is not the organization, it's not the corporate structure, it's not a religious entity either. Jesus didn't intend it to be religious. So we have primarily made the church a religious institution. It's a place where we go and worship. When the church is not a place, the church is not a building. The church is the people. And so the role of the church in the earth, as Jesus talked about it, was to make it in the earth as it is in heaven. And so when Jesus was teaching his disciples how to pray, that's what he did. He said, "I want you to pray. Let it be in the earth like it is in heaven, in earth as it is in heaven," because that's what church is and church does. They're the group of people. So we are the group of people who have set ourselves apart for his purposes. We are the church. We are the ones who are putting our heads together, our strategies. We're the ones who are working together to make sure that we do things together collectively to make it in the earth like it is in heaven. And so I'll give you a couple of scriptural references. You can turn to Matthew chapter 16 and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. In the first instance, Matthew 13 through 19 is where Peter said, you're the Christ, you're the Son of God. And Jesus said, "I know that flesh and blood didn't give you that revelation." He said, "On this truth, I'm going to build my church, build my ecclesia." When he said that, he was thinking on that truth, the group of us would get together, whether we're in a corporate structure or not, we would get together and we would make it in the earth like it is in heaven. And so the other two times he used it were in Matthew chapter 18. And he says, if you have a knucklehead member who won't do what he's supposed to do, bring them in front of the group that I've called church and let them bind and loose him as they see fit. And so the binding and loosing is what church does. Church is supposed to bind things in the natural realm in the earth to make it like it is in heaven. A practical example of this is if smoking and diabetes runs in my, there are some things I can do to bind those things that come against people in my family who have a predisposition towards those things. I can stop smoking. I can stop eating sugary drinks, eat sugary foods and drinking sugary drinks. I can do some certain things in the natural realm, just common sense. I can do some things that will bind things in the earth so that it is like it is in heaven. And so I am, just thrilled that revelation is coming so that we realize who we are, that the church is not the entity down on the corner. It's not the building. It's not the group of deacons and choir members. It's not the pastor. The church is those people who are followers of Jesus, who have set themselves apart to make it in the earth like it is in heaven, because that's what Jesus meant when he said the word ecclesia, church, translates into church. Wasn't a religious term. He did not anticipate church being the religious services or church being the building. Church is the people. We are the church. And once we realize our role, our function, what he expects from us, I'm confident that when people do show up to an organization that calls itself church, then they will see the same kind of results that he saw. And so if we were honest with each other, if we were to get down to the truth, we know that even though it's a good feeling that we get when we go to church, we have to admit that we don't see the results that the early church saw when Jesus left. We don't see the results that Jesus saw when he was walking the earth. Yet he tells us these things and greater things you're going to do. Well, I mean, it's been 2,000 years since he died and he went to heaven. So when are we supposed to start doing those things? When are we supposed to start seeing those things? When are we going to start expecting those things? And by and large, our quote unquote church activity is limited to us getting together to hear some songs, to hear a good sermon, a good word, and then we go back to our lives. When Jesus anticipated that as church, we would get together and collaborate. We would get together and strategize. How do we make it in the earth like it is in heaven? How do we reach more people to make disciples? Those are the things that church is supposed to do. So when I then consider in the context of he defining the church, my goals, my personal ambitions, the things that I like to pursue, it then has relevance because it fits in church. Now, a lot of times the things we want to do and the things that we find interesting and we really want to pursue, the corporate structure that we know today doesn't have a room at all for that. Doesn't have any room for that, but it doesn't fit. They have their own list of checklists. These are the things that we're doing. These are our initiatives, and that doesn't quite fit in. But when I realized what church really is, my goals, my passions, my ambitions are the things that make me valuable to the church. They are things that make me, when I collaborate with you, make me helpful to you so that you become better at what it is you really want to pursue. And you're able to expand the kingdom influence through who you are and through the pursuit of your, even if other people think they're weird, your passions, the things that you have always wanted to do since you were a kid, the things you've always wanted to see, even though everybody else would say that's childish. You can't make money doing that, or that doesn't make any sense, or it doesn't fit in a normal church environment. Those are exactly the things that Jesus wants you to pursue because his expectation of the church is different what the church's expectation of itself is as they manifest it on a Sunday in, Sunday out basis. Let's get together. Let's have some songs. Let's pray. Let's hope because we're not believing. We're not using faith for anything. But we really want to go ahead and make people feel better and be encouraged. And they do that. But the church is not that organization, as I said earlier. So a few weeks ago, when I had that head-on collision with the concrete barrier, I had going at 70 miles an hour, and then in 2 seconds, I was stopped in front of the concrete barrier. When they had me in that ambulance, they were trying to take me to the hospital. And I said, no, this is a spiritual issue. It has a spiritual solution. Somebody needs to take me to church. So they looked in my briefcase, called Pastor Gibson. His number was in there, and they called him, and he took me to church. And so when the saints laid hands on me and the pain disappeared, that was exactly what church is supposed to do. And so that's part of what it means to do this. Church is not supposed to feel good and sing some songs, but church ought to be getting together to do the same things that Jesus did. I mean, church is supposed to get together if somebody has an ailment. That's what he did. Little old lady shows up and she's humped all over in the sanctuary, in the temple. He says, isn't this a daughter of Abraham? Ought not she be able to walk in health? And he said, has her to be healed. Why isn't it that we don't see that today in our church services? It's because we have somehow gotten off basis, gotten off track to some degree. We're supposed to do all those things. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything against the church, and I'm an advocate of every Sunday attendance. I'll go through the week if we need to, if we have opportunity to. I love going to gather with other saints, but I can't tell you that I want to go to a church service as the object of what we do. I want to go to a church service because after our church service, that's what we do. We sit down and talk about what is it we do in order to make sure that we are making it in the earth like it is in heaven. That's what we do during the week when we have conversations. Our goal is not the fancy, real glitzy service, not even the fact that I'm going to get up and preach or teach or somebody else will. But it really is to not only hear the word, but to be doers of the word as well. And so I challenge you, because you have your own passions and your own ambitions, your own goals. I challenge you to find out not just how you can achieve those goals, but meditate on what Jesus anticipated for the church. Because when you find yourself in the right group of people as church, I have a feeling that you are going to soar in your own explorations and in your own pursuit of your own personal passions. And so I'm going to pause right there. I've never done this before. Again, this is the very first one. I'm glad that you joined me. Any questions or comments, feel free to type them in, and I'll try to comment right away. And if I can't, I'll try to get to it at another time. But church is not the group that is meeting for Sunday service. The church, by definition, is the group of people who have been called out to make it in the earth like it is in heaven. Should you keep going to your church services? Yes, I still think you should keep going. Should you keep going to Bible study? Absolutely. Can't do without that either. But what I am saying is that as church, we need to rethink who we are so that we become who we're supposed to be. Because he's the one who said we would know the truth and the truth would set us free or make us free. Knowing this truth should set us free from the constraints that contemporary religion has enforced upon us in the form of a church institution. So stay in church, please. Pastors, don't be mad at me. I'm telling folks to stay in church, But I do believe we should rethink who the church is. And so I continue to pray for you. If you're watching this, I continue to believe that God will open your eyes, the eyes of your understanding. And I hope you will join me here again so that we can talk about these issues. And maybe next time you can challenge, question what's going on, and we can really get to the truth. I don't pretend to know all the answers, but I know that we have the word and we have Jesus. And Jesus is the truth, he's the life, and he's the way. May God bless you and may he keep you. And thank you. Please pray for me as I will be praying for you.